Oh man, that is so much fun. The thing I love about today is you get to really watch your line. Look how fat that thing is. Whoa! Come here, let me get my hands on you. Come here. No, you don't. Oh! Look at that thing. Is she pregnant or what? Good grief. Look how they're built. Just the shape of a spotted bass is just a thing to be seen. Look at how much girth is right there in the belly. But when you fish bridge pollards, if you fish the right baits, if you make sure that bait falls right by the piling, you can catch fish just like this on some of the toughest days there is out there on the water. I want to walk you through some of my favorite baits. A couple of baits that I've always found to be very productive around a bridge. One is a soft plastic worm. I like straight-tailed soft plastic worms, mainly because I can rig them a bunch of different ways. I can use them on a jig head, I can use them on a drop shot, and I can use them on a Nico style bait. There's a bunch of different ways to rig a soft plastic worm, a bunch of different ways to present it. So it's just a really good bait to use. Some of my favorite colors and profiles, one is a long shots. The reason I like the Z-Man long shots, it has a very, very slender profile. And one of the most important things that I've found out when I'm fishing bridges is to make sure that I get my bait right beside the bridge column. I can't have it 2 foot off the bridge column even. I mean, it's got to be right on it, and it's got to fall vertical. So the fact that the bait is very, very slender lets the bait fall vertical much better. There's some other baits that I like to use. Of course, my Z-Man SMH worms is a great application as well. I like it if I got a little bit more stain water because it's a little bit more beefier bait. You can use stick baits. You can use wacky rigs or weighted wacky rigs, which nowadays we call the Nico style bait, where you put a weight in the end of it. And you can use the Nico weights, which is something I have on my website, or you can use a nail weight. I'll show you what a nail weight is here. I use those oftentimes as well. This is a great way to catch them over deeper water. You can just take a nail weight like this right here. You can buy these in your tackle store. If you go to shopblat.com, we have the Nico weights that are specifically for elastic, because sometimes the nail weights can be hard to put in the plastic. But you can just insert that nail right inside the plastic. And once you get it in the plastic, what that does is give you a wacky rig that you can get down 18, 20 foot deep. And so I'll stick it in there like that. They're usually segmented so you can put as much or as little plastic lead in it as you want. A lot of times I'll cut it off, and then that'll get that bait down there a lot quicker. What I'll do with a Nico style bait is I'll use a hook like this one right here. This is the GP Finesse by Spearpoint Fishing. I'll take that. This is a 1.0, which is probably my favorite size for all around. The GP Finesse. You can take that, hook it right in the center, cast it out by the bridge pile and let it sink down, almost always on slack line. Just a good old standby though is just a plain old jig head. This one right here is the SMH head that I designed. I'll put that on any of these plastics right here, the straight tail plastics, whether it's the bang sticks that I just showed you, which is more like a stick bait, or if it's the SMH worms, I'll use, of course, the SMH heads. But one that's a sleeper that nobody really throws a lot, it was the first one that I talked about. The first one that I talked about, it's a really great option that not many people talk about on a shaky head, is the long shots. It's much more slender, has a lot more natural action in the water. So any of those are really good to fish around bridge pilots. When you jump over the hard baits, and a lot of these baits, they work good any time of the year. It doesn't matter if it's winter, summer, spring, or fall. There's always going to be a fish around a bridge piling. And a lot of these baits you can use at any point in time of the year. Second bait that I like to use, a bait category, would be a jerk bait. I like a jerk bait because fish around a bridge piling, they're almost never on the bottom. Always suspended. So your mindset with your baits has to be baits that suspend very well, that catch suspended fish. I could be today fishing over 100 foot of water. These fish might be in the top 10 foot. Some of them may be deeper down since we are fishing in the cooler months of the year, but a lot of them are going to be 10 foot or less. So a jerk bait is a great bait, especially if it's windy. Today we've got calmer conditions, so if I had to guess, a jerk bait is not going to be exactly the best bait. But if I'm fishing on a calm, slick day like you see today, I would probably use a soft plastic. Now, I may be able to catch one on a jerk bait today for the simple fact that it's cloudy, and reaction baits seem to work better when it's cloudy. But overall, if it's windy and it's harder to present, you find yourself having trouble presenting a soft plastic, go to a hard bait, and more specifically, one like this. This is the 13 Fishing Loco Special. It's one of my favorites to fish around a bridge piling as well. Lastly, almost always a good option, because around a bridge, your main forage is going to be the shad forage that's in your lake, whether that be threadfin shad, blueback herring. They all seem to corral around bridge piling. So a 3-inch swim bait or a finesse style swim bait is good on a jig head, something like a 3/8 ounce jig head. This is the one I like to use. It's called Opening Night 3-inch minnows. I'll put that on the jig head and just slow roll it by those bridge pilings. But what I love about the 3-inch swim bait, if the fish are up high, I can keep the bait up high and catch those fish in the first 5 foot of the water column. If I'm noticing on my graph that those fish are down 15, 20 foot, I can sing it down, count it down to death, slow reel it back, and catch those fish that are suspended on the bridge piling. So another great option for you to catch fish around a bridge piling. Okay guys, let's look at the rod and reel combo that I'm going to be using for this shaky head setup. You've seen it on my videos before. This is my signature series favorite 7'1" medium heavy power rod. Now don't let that scare you because it says medium heavy power rod. I use it for a lot of different things, even saltwater fishing. It's got some backbone, but look at the tip in this rod. It has a lot of tip in it, but from about midways back, it's got a lot of backbone to be able to turn a fish around. I want to be able to turn them around even around these bridge pilings. So a 7'1" medium heavy favorite signature series B-Lat. I'm using a 3000 series or the 3.0 13 Fishing Axum spinning reel. It's got a smooth drag and it's super light, so I can feel those sensitive bites. When you're fishing bridge pilings, a lot of times the bites only come on one side. A lot of times that's because that piling, just like a dock, is throwing shade.